Let me ask you something. Are you finding your offshore, your deep water fish aren't set up like they used to? Either they're not there, or there's like 2 or 3 of them and they're getting pounded. Remember I told you about that chick Amy? They're getting pounded like Amy, dude. They will not bite. I've been kind of playing around with something over the past few weeks and I had a little bit of an epiphany, and I've noticed tournament guys doing it, and it's also been something that's sort of revealed by fishing these urchins, coikes, the urchin fever, right? I got the urchin fever. It's forced me to kind of relook at what I consider offshore fishing. And it's unlocked a whole different way to approach deep water, structure-oriented fish. And I'm no pro, I'm kind of a tool bag, but every once in a while I figure out something a little juicy. If you're finding some of your classical, traditional kind of out deep spots or looking barren, well, I got kind of a little trick and a little pattern that once you recognize it, it's gonna unlock a whole new section of the lake for you. Every good fishing pattern starts with a story, right? So I was out fishing a chatterbait mini. I love doing that this time of year. Catching 1, catching 2, caught like a 4-pounder, caught a 3-pounder, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of crapped the bed, right? It slowed down. So I'm like, you know what? My buddy showed me how to kind of fish this coike, this urchin thing, like a fluke. So I just picked it up and started throwing it blind, dude. Throwing it out, twitch, 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 twitch. Caught a 4-pounder in like 3 minutes. And I saw him on the cheater machine. I saw him on the front looker come up. And the key was, there was like 3 or 4 fish that came up with him. So I started thinking about it. I'm like, dude, there's a whole bunch of them down there, almost like a school of fish. But like, how are they set up? What are they doing? Why are they there? And I started looking at where I was located, and basically it was a grass flat that had a little small ditch in it, dude. Shallow though, like 7 to 10 foot, 6 to 10 foot, because I'm catching them on that chatterbait mini, 1/2 ounce, ticking the grass and that. And so I started thinking about it, and I'm like, dude, this is basically a ledge, but shallower. It has a little bit of a drop off, a little bit of a fall, plus there's cover. So I started hopping around Lake Guntersville, dude, one of the freaking most pressured lakes in the country, right? And I started looking around and trying to find other things that duplicated that. So what are the key components to this? And it's one simple phrase: mid-depths, secondary stuff. Get off the main lake, get off the main river, and start looking shallower. That's the biggest thing, dude. I've literally reframed the entire lake, but I'm looking at things that are more subtle, that are off the main lake, that aren't super obvious. The other thing is cover. A lot of guys kind of shy away from using their electronics, using their graphs when it comes to grass, when it comes to stumps, when it comes to anything that kind of inhibits a very clear, obvious look. That's why it's so nice to find those deep offshore structures on just like a barren shell bar or a big hard spot, right? Because they're obvious, they're easy to find. Well, we've kind of moved beyond that, right? You got to be a little more sneaky. And this is where that coike stuff comes in. I'm fishing, like, you've probably seen that Monster Bass depth charts. It's like a mid-size. It's a 19 millimeter. It's a good all-around size. And I'm fishing that in a lot of these situations. And I'm really weighting it with like a 3/32 or a 1/16 ounce, which means it's very slow to fall. It doesn't get down very deep, and it takes time to get down there. So I've kind of refocused, and that's what kind of revealed this pattern to me, to shallower places. And it's forced me to kind of look at the lake differently, because I'm looking for drops. I'm looking for structure. I'm looking for grass points. I'm looking for curves in a ditch or something along those lines. Not on the main lake, not super deep, 20, 30 foot, but basically in some of these shallower secondary areas off the main lake. What makes for a good spot to look at? You know, we talked about a ditch, that's obvious. Any kind of slight depth change, cover, like we talked about, grass, stumps, rock piles, that's one of the tricky ones. You find some gravel and some rock, a lot of guys shy away from it because on side scan, it actually looks like fish. It's hard to differentiate the two, right? And then the other thing are broad flats. Broad flats that you know have fish, finding some kind of edge, whether that's a grass edge, whether that's a slight drop. The biggest key is here, you need to be more analytical with your electronics. My buddy Brody Robinson put up a really good Instagram post, dude, and he showed how zooming in on his hummingbird shows more, especially on side scan. And I think a lot of us, especially guys like me that come from a few years ago when we could go side scan a ledge, see 30 fish and go catch them, I think sometimes we don't stop and get more detail oriented, because everything is about fishing smaller, fishing more precise, right? Fishing more detailed. And these sort of secondary offshore structures, these secondary ledges, sometimes they're not super obvious. They're not super obvious on a map. They're not super obvious when you're actually scanning them. So you have to scan them multiple times, multiple angles. And the reality is sometimes you just got to put the front looker down and go fishing, right? You got to put that coike or like a hover rig or even like a chatterbait out there, twitch it over that edge and see if those fish will draw up. If they don't spend a bunch of time doing it. You know, go If you have a structure that you think fits those concepts, that checks those boxes, go make some casts, see if you can get anything to rise up off the bottom, anything to move. If you don't, move on, dude, because there's gonna be a lot of dead water, especially when you're fishing little small areas. But when you find that needle in the haystack, it gets absolutely ridiculous. So what kind of baits am I running? I'm basically shallow sizing, if that's a word, your traditional ledge baits, right? And I found this pattern with the Urchin. So I got like a 19 millimeter, it's a depth charge, like kind of like a mid-size Urchin. And then I got a great big one, the 23 millimeter, the Burtec, but 3/32 frog hook, that trocar that I built, or a 16th ounce. And really I'm using that to test places, throwing it out there, sinking it down, twitch, twitch. Can I get fish to rise? Am I finding a school of bass hidden in the grass or next to a stump? It's a great reaction sort of test bait. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm running some like smaller swim baits, right? Like a Bass Mafia, it's a line through, but I'm running like the shallow, like the 4-inch. Basically taking what I would normally fish out deep, that bigger 6-7 inch, running that shallower, smaller one to kind of tick the bottom and run it up and get that reaction strike. The other thing is you can do it with smaller crankbaits, right? Your DT8, your DT6, things along those lines, things you throw in like a DT20 if you're out deep, but since you're shallower, since you're ticking grass, since you're ticking like a ledge in 6-7 feet of water, you need to kind of downsize that bill and how deep they're diving. The other thing is some drag baits, and I'm using these in 2 different ways. I'll have like a Texas rig worm, right, or a shaky head, and then I'll have a Carolina rig, and that's one to catch fish, right, because they work, but I'll use like a 3/8 ounce Carolina rig. I'll use like a 5/16 or a 3/16 ounce Texas rig, and same with that shaky head, but I'm using it also to test the bottom. One of the biggest keys to this pattern is, yes, you can have structure, yes, you can have grass, but you need hard bottom. It's one of those keys to summer. So you want to be able to feel, if you can't tell with your graph, you want to be able to kind of feel that tick, tick, that bump, bump return you get on those drag style baits to let you know, hey, this has that hard bottom, it has the right components. Let's go see if there's some fish in there. You can get a little finesse too, an ultralight drop shot. We talked about it in spring quite a bit. David Dudley used it to catch like shallow bedding fish. Just a drop shot with an 1/8 ounce. One of the keys though is setting it up weedless or snagless, using like that, I think it's that trocar straight shank, like a straight shank kind of like weedless Texas riggable hook, because you're fishing around cover, and in most cases you're gonna fish a little bit bigger worm. You're gonna fish a 6-inch robo worm, maybe a 7-inch straight tail, something along those lines. And then also a Nico rig. I never go summer fishing without a Nico rig, dude, but I'll downsize to like a 16th ounce or even lighter to kind of keep it on the bottom, but keep it light and just kind of shake it along the bottom. If you've been struggling offshore, kind of like I was a few weeks ago, dude, try this out. Reassess your lake. Look at these mid depths. Look for hard spots. Look for subtle drops, not your big jacking freaking Highland impoundment drops. Subtle little ditches, subtle little drops, little places where you know grass grows and there's a little bit of a taper in that grass. Just places that are very secondary, very off that mainstay, off that main place where people will be looking, and start scanning, dude. You're not always going to see them. Sometimes you're gonna have to kind of test the waters, go fishing a little bit, let that front looker cheating machine help you out a little bit, and use those baits to just sort of like see if fish rise. That's what I've been doing. It's a lot of like test, fail, but when you hit that right spot, it's gonna be yours, dude. Like no one's gonna be on it. And that's what's been kind of fun about this. You can find that needle in the haystack. You just have to kind of reimagine what you believe offshore or structure fishing is. Hope this helped you out there, guys. I'll drop links to all the stuff that we talked about, the baits and all that kind of stuff at Monster Bass and Tackle Warehouse down in the description box. Let me know if you've been seeing the same thing offshore where the land has been barren, dude. It looks like Amy, right? It got pounded to death and it ain't putting out no more, dude, because it's something that I've noticed, but that just means we need to adapt and solve the problem, right? I will check you later though, my homies. I'm sweating balls, but I'm gonna go catch some bass.